Hey, Sammy, thank you so much for being here with me today. I'm so excited to do this interview.
Oh, Michelle, I'm thrilled. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, for sure. So what we'll do is I'll just introduce myself real quickly, throw it over to you to introduce yourself, and then we'll just dive right in. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds great.
Cool. Well, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Michelle Warner, and I'm the creator of a new project called Michelle Builds It, where I am showing people what it takes in real time to build a course and info product-based online business. I've been in the online game for over 10 years, so I know what I'm doing, but I'm building a brand new business, and it's been a cool process just to show that piece of it. And that, Sammy, is why we're connected, because as I build my business, I'm very aware of what I'm an expert in and not. And I know that I have a ton of subject matter expertise when it comes to building email funnels and conversion and all that stuff that goes into an online business. And I want to get that knowledge to people, but I don't know how to. I am not a teacher of any kind. So you're an instructional design expert. And I reached out to you because I want to show people how important it is that if you're out there creating courses, we're told to, teach what you know and teach what you love, but we also have a moral obligation to teach it in a way that our clients and customers are going to get results, right?
Absolutely.
So with that quick intro, I'm going to kick it over to you. Tell me about what you do and how you do it, and then we'll dive into the meat of the topic.
So a little bit about my formal background. I'm originally trained as a designer. I went on to get a master's degree in learning design and technology from Penn State. It used to be called instructional design. It's still an instructional design degree. I spent a year building online and in-person trainings for the US military, primarily focusing on domestic violence assessment. Was a wonderful experience, learned a tremendous amount, but decided that working for the military wasn't really for me. So, I wanted to be working with small business owners, and I wanted to be working with people who were driven by their skills and their passion to help others and to do it on a much smaller scale.
Yeah, there's a couple of different worlds there.
Yeah. This was a little bit more my speed. So I left to found my own company last July. We're coming on almost a full year for me. Which is,
oh, wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's totally bizarre. And so
that's fun, right? A roller coaster.
Exactly. I mean, if you had told me 2 years ago that, I was going to start my own business, I might have looked at you like you were nuts. But, that's the transition. And
for sure.
So I do all sorts of things. I cut my teeth building online interactive modules. I've done workbooks. I've done in-person trainings. I've done presentations. So if it's in the realm of instruction, so classes, modules, written instructions even, an instructional designer probably has touched it at some point.
Well, I love that, because I reached out to my Facebook group and then a couple of other Facebook groups just to get some questions to make sure we were going to cover everything today. And that came up over and over again, was how many different formats, because we all know how we learn, but
oh my God,
everybody else learns. And I think that's a huge topic. So
there are that you've done so many ways.
Yeah.
And I think people are going to be surprised to hear the tools that they already have that they can be using as, course platforms.
Sweet. Well, let's dive in and start talking about it. And I want to use myself as a little bit of a case study, because I think I'm pretty typical of where a lot of people are coming from.
Yeah.
I have, as I said in the introduction, I have over 10 years of experience working on conversions, working on sales funnels, and this new business that I'm creating is going to be all about helping earlier stage entrepreneurs build their first sales funnels, understand conversion for the very first time. And so I am looking at taking this leap. Right now, I work one-on-one, very high-end clients, helping with very advanced strategies. And I'm trying to take that information and say, okay, here's 10 years of experience. Here's super high-end strategies. How do I bring that all the way back and talk that down to size for a new entrepreneur? And this question came up over and over again. Everyone's saying, I have so much information. I want to share everything I know. What is my first step to just even talk it down to size?
So here is your first step.
Yeah.
As much as this is all about you and your knowledge, it's really all about your learner. You need to get down into the ground and really talk to people, dig in with them, find out, what kind of background knowledge do they have? What kind of experience do they have? What are they most interested in? Where do they think their sticking points are? And you're going to want to do this with a lot of people, because everybody's going to learn differently, and everybody's going to come at it from different perspectives and have different life experience that they can bring to this. But as you talk to more and more people, you're going to see patterns and trends emerge about where they are most struggling and where your expertise can start to help them. Because novice learners learn differently from intermediate learners, learn differently from advanced learners. And the way you structure things for those three groups is very different. So if you're looking at building a course for someone who's just starting, it's going to be different than building a course for someone who's been doing this for a year or two, and very different from someone who's been doing it like you have for like 10 years. So really understanding where they're coming from and understanding, too, what misconceptions about it that they're bringing to the table is really key.
And so that's interesting because from a conversion standpoint, I teach that all the time too, the old customer avatar, right? Learn how to talk to your person in terms of a marketing ask, but you're saying it also works for the instructional design. I should be tweaking those conversations I'm having.
Absolutely. Lots of, if you are used to going out and doing market research, you have to tweak it just a little bit to dig in and do your learner investigation.
Okay, so how do I tweak it? What are a couple of questions I should add to my thing? Because right now I talk to people all day long, every day. I'm in the depths of that right now. So I want to put this to use this afternoon when I have a phone call.
Get them to tell you stories about what they're doing.
Okay.
People are going to give you their best insight without meaning to. They're going to do it unprompted. They're going to do it just talking about their everyday ins and outs.
For sure.
Doing.
Sure.
And there's going to be things in there that as someone who's a subject matter expert is going to catch your attention, and then you can kind of dig deeper with them.
Okay.
To figure out, okay, what's really going on here? Is it that you don't have the knowledge? Is it that you have the knowledge and you can't apply it? Or is it that you're applying it and you're not seeing the results you want? Because there's totally different kinds of deficits. So understanding what the deficit is for your learner is going to be really fundamental to informing, how your course is structured, what content you put in it. And frankly, you might have different courses. You might have a course that is, this is the knowledge. You might have another course that, really digs into, okay, we're going to review the knowledge quick, but we're really going to dig deep into implementation. And you might have yet another course that's, well, I've done all of this, and I thought I applied it okay, but I'm not seeing the results I want. So how do I now go back and reapply this knowledge and apply the new data I have from this attempt that wasn't quite right to improve it?
Okay, so that's cool. So what I heard there was that there's almost three kinds of learning categories, if you will. There is just straight up knowledge transfer.
Yes.
And then there's how to implement it, which I do run into a lot. Tech is overwhelming. What am I supposed to use?
Yeah.
It's very different than just core concepts. And then I'll call it the more advanced strategy of, okay, now I have the basics in place. So what the heck did it mean and how can I improve it? Because even if it works, we always want to improve it, right?
Yeah. And basically what we're talking about from an instructional standpoint is you're putting an increasing demand on your learner.
Okay.
First, you're just asking them to understand this information and remember it. Then you're asking them to transfer the knowledge that they've retained and actually apply it to a real world situation. And then you're asking them to analyze and synthesize the results of that application. So it's an increasing demand.
That makes so much sense. It's ridiculous. I've never thought about it that way, but that's exactly how you talk it down to size.
That's exactly what you do. You need to figure out where the lowest point of entry is. And it's not always going to be what you expect. It's one of the things that we talk about all the time in course design, that you are not your learner.
Right.
It's such a hard thing. Like, just by dint of having years of experience and knowing how you learned something, you're going to have a skewed perspective. And that's not a bad thing, because it's going to mean that you're prepared to answer questions and troubleshoot and try different approaches. But it also means that what worked for you might not work for the majority of your learners. And really digging down to where is the fundamental start point and where is the basic point that they need to start really comes into place. There was I saw one of your Facebook questions had to do with, someone mentioned how they would never have thought to learn copywriting skills before learning blogging skills.
Yes.
And to me, as a designer, the fundamental thing about learning to write a blog is learning who your audience is and how to talk to them. And that is such a fundamental part of it, because you can create all the wonderful content you want, but if you're not writing in a way that is accessible to your audience and that's
right
to them, it won't matter.
Right. So yeah, you have the information, but that just comes full circle to what we were talking about before. Yeah. Yeah. You have an obligation to get it into their hands in a way that's actually useful.
And that is going to be meaningful.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll get surprises about what you really need to do. We built a training when I was working with the unit at the university building for the military, that on the surface, all this training was about was using and scoring a form for assessing intimate partner violence. What we found out in investigating was that most of the people who we were building this training for didn't have the interview skills necessary to build the rapport and find out this information.
Oh. Yeah.
So you will get surprises. You will get surprises. And I mean, this form literally said at the top, do not directly ask these questions. With field testing, we found people were directly asking these questions.
Well, because if they don't know how to ask anything else, they're going to look at that and disregard it because they have no other option, right?
Exactly. So you're going to be surprised, and you can never really anticipate what your learners are going to do in a lot of ways. It's always like, oh, how did you do that? Why did you do that?
And I run into that all the time as well. And that's, I'm surprised constantly by the questions that people come up, or the missing links, or whatever it might be. Like, oh, I didn't realize that you didn't know that, or I didn't realize that that was such a misunderstood topic.
You just really have to embrace where your learners are and figure out how to come to that point and meet them, which your next point then is, okay, you know what's going on with your learners, you know what they need, and you now have all of this content, and holy crap, what are you supposed to do with it?
Yes, that's exactly what I wanted to talk about. Before you dive in, I just want to put two different frames around it, because I know we have people coming from two places. So for me, in the online world, again, we can either do like mini courses and membership sites, or we can do these big flagship courses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know people are interested in both options. I'm very interested in a membership model, because I like the idea of little mini courses that, again, I can, because I talk to a lot of beginners, but I also talk to intermediate people. And for me, it's just way less overwhelming to think about doing mini courses for those different audiences versus trying to put it all into one huge core thing. And also I get distracted and bored really quickly. So I'm like, oh, if I do mini courses, I can go off on tangents, and the people who are right for them can go find them, but it doesn't have to be right for everyone. So I'd love to hear how that translates into that kind of mini course membership model. But then also, if you do want to do a flagship course, how do you structure that order so that maybe the beginning modules are the beginner stuff and then you slowly get into the analysis? I don't know. I'll throw it back to you.
So basically, no matter how you're going to structure, whether you're doing one big flagship or you're doing a bunch of mini courses, you're going to ask yourself the same starting question, which is, at the end of this course, this workbook, this whatever you're building, what is my learner going to be able to do? And what do they need to know, believe, or think in order to be able to do it?
Okay.
So this is called what are they going to do is called a performance objective.
Okay.
What do they know are called enabling objectives.
Okay.
And these kind of become the roadmaps for a course. So in a big course, you might have, your overall performance objective of, we'll go back to blocking for a second here.
Yeah.
And, they'll be able to run a blog. Well, what sort of things are they going to need to know in order to get that blog up and running? They're going to need all the technical stuff. So how do they host it? How do they transfer to their own domain? How do they choose, a theme? What tools are available to edit that theme? Okay, great. They're going to need to know who they're writing for and how to talk to that audience. So you need to teach them about market analysis. You need to teach them about I call it learner analysis. In this case, it's reader analysis. You need to give them the fundamentals of copywriting. All right, so we've got that. Now you need to talk about how you develop blog content and editorial calendars, and what makes good blog content, and how do you execute good blog content. And to me, I see this as, oh, each of these topics is its own separate module.
Sure.
It's the same.
And then you probably go through that process for each module too. You look at the entire course, and then each module you break down and go through the same process, right?
Yes, yes. One of the examples that I always give people, and I apologize if there's anyone in the audience who's actually trained as a reading specialist, because I'm going to grossly oversimplify the field right now.
We love to grossly oversimplify in the online world. It's all cool, right?
But basically, if you're trying to teach someone how to read, what are your building blocks? Well, they need to recognize all the letters. Then they need to recognize all the sounds those letters make. They need to understand how those sounds fit together. And once you have all of these sounds fitting together, you need to be able to decode them into a word that has meaning.
Okay.
And you really have to think at that kind of granular level. And it takes practice. This is not something that will come easily for everyone, and that's okay. It's something that when you're learning to build courses, you spend a lot of time doing and doing the breakdown of. And it's also why I tell people who are developing courses, like, have 10 or 15 people who are not from your field, who are in your target learner audience, who you say, you know, I'll give you access for, you know, a discounted rate, or I'll do it for free, for exchange and you sitting with me and going through this and giving me honest feedback.
Which, by the way, from a conversion standpoint, works amazingly as well. I love how much overlap there really is. You know, when you're doing market research for your conversion, do market research for your course. When you're pre-selling, because that's just a smart sales strategy, it's also a smart strategy to make sure people are getting the results they need. Yeah, it all fits
you have test learners, and you're verifying as you go that your course is effective. And because that whole you are not your learner divide, if you find out that, hey, there's a step here that you just didn't see, and that happens. Like,
oh, for sure.
People shouldn't beat themselves up if it does happen, and it will. It's okay.
Yeah. It seems almost, I don't know how it wouldn't happen.
Yeah, you have time to fix it, and you have all of this feedback to see, okay, this is where it's breaking down for people, and I know how to fix it, so let me just put something in here that talks about that.
Yeah.
Which is so essential, because you don't ever want to have a course that's never been tested. Workbook, again, just when I say course, I really mean any learning product.
And we'll talk about that in a minute, because I know there are a ton of questions about what to produce. Yeah.
And you just throw it into the field. Well, from a marketing perspective, you don't know that you have a good product. It hasn't been verified. And if it's a train wreck, which untested courses can be train wrecks. There's
for sure, especially if it's your first time.
Especially if you've never done this before.
Yeah.
Untested courses can be train wrecks. You really don't want that being associated with you or your brand, especially if you are trying to build up that expertise and that kind of sense of renown around what you do. You don't want your first attempt to be a miss. I see lots of things online that are like, oh yeah, turn your blog into a course. And I'm sitting here going, oh God, please don't.
Right.
Please don't do that. You have not done the legwork.
Right. And that's what I was just joking about. We love to oversimplify things in the online world, and you hear over and over, oh, just teach what you know, just transition this into a course. And like, no, there's, yes, I understand the overall conversation there, but there's steps, 1 through 20 in between those two things that need to happen.
Exactly. I always joke that with course design, there's so many moving pieces.
Right.
Which you don't see from the outside, and you really don't see until you're in the thick of it. There's a reason that corporate ID teams are 15 to 20 people.
Sure.
When I worked building for the military, so little side note about how most of the instructional design world works.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, instructional designers will not take it all the way through from analysis, design, development, implementation. Oh gosh, how am I blanking on evaluation? I was going to say exploration, but that's not it. That's not the adding.
Validation. It's just the topic we've been talking about for the past 5 minutes. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. generally instructional designers will not do all of that themselves. I worked in an environment where we did do all of that ourselves. Most IDs will analyze and design, and then they'll look at evaluation.
Okay.
They will develop or implement.
Okay.
So if you are looking to hire an instructional designer, you definitely want to ask questions about what they do, because
Sure.
like IDs come from lots of different training. I was trained originally as a visual designer, made the jump to instructional design, and because of the nature of my workplace, I'm pretty much comfortable anywhere in the process. There are brilliant instructional designers who do not design and do not develop. They just analyze, and they do the instructional part of the design, but not any of the other accompanying parts that you, especially if you're not a visual designer by trade and you're not used to kind of the semantics of visual communication, you'll want.
Right. Right.
And it's important to know where your designer's skill set is.
And it would seem like if anybody in the online world is going to be working with an instructional designer, you probably want someone who can do a little bit of it all, because this is going to be all new to you and you're looking for overview guidance.
There's a running joke about how many hats does an instructional designer wear, because at this point in the instructional design field, so to give you context for people who I worked with, I'm trained as a visual designer, and I also had a long interest in game design. So I came with a little bit of that too. Another one of my colleagues is trained in industrial and organizational psych. I have another colleague who spent something to the tune of 30 years with PBS, has a regional Emmy to his name. And I have other colleagues who come from teaching. So we're a really varied bunch.
Interesting.
And we, at this point, with conversations about game-based learning versus gamification, and social learning and user-centered or learner-centered principles of design and best practices for UI and UX of learning products, you're going to want somebody who's at least familiar with all of what's going on, because you can have a great course, and if it's not easy to use and navigate, that's going to affect how well your content actually is received.
Well, and let's talk about that, because that was another huge theme in all the questions we got. And I know something that I really struggle with is how many ways or what kind of pieces do we need to give to people in order to hit all the different learning styles, right? You see videos out there, you see transcripts, you see, someone was talking about in-course quizzes that they didn't understand but are super popular.
No quizzes.
Okay, let's talk about that for a second. And for me, the one that kills me are all these fillable PDF workbooks I see out there. To me, nothing about that makes any sense to my brain, but I see that they're super popular. So obviously, I feel like I'm in the minority there. So when I'm thinking about my courses, I start kind of swearing on the side. I'm like, I got to make these freaking workbooks that no one's ever going to touch. But I have a feeling people are probably going to touch them. So give us a lowdown of what kind of things we should be including in our courses.
Okay, so I know video is like super, super huge right now. And there are some things where video is an awesome fit. If you're teaching a technology-based skill, or if you're
like a screencast,
you definitely want to be using video. If you're doing, for some reason you're teaching like an online yoga course where people need to see your whole body and need to understand how you're getting into and out of things, it's a great one. Also, if you're teaching something that's really complicated, it can be easier to hear it talked out and to have supporting visuals.
Okay.
The one thing that you never want to do is you never want to read exactly what you're showing on the screen, because it'll actually decrease retention, which is...
It's just like a public talk, right?
Exactly. The one thing that you do always want to do, though, if you're doing video or audio, you do want to include a transcript, both because there will be people who learn better by reading, and there will be people who take your course who may be hearing impaired.
Yep.
And accessibility is still such a thing that you need to be able to design for in this case.
For sure. And that's something that I think is forgotten all the time.
Yeah, I see a lot of things where I'm just kind of like, you're so close. You're so close, but this is not accessible.
Yeah.
Beyond that, there's not a lot of hard and fast rules. What I will say, I saw there was definitely some questions about engagement.
Yes.
As a blanket
and those questions were about the quizzes. So you obviously have talk to the quizzes and engagement.
We'll get to the quizzes in a second.
Okay, fair enough.
As a blanket statement, when you're teaching a skill, when you're teaching knowledge, you want to entrench it in the context in which it will actually be used as much as you humanly can.
Okay.
You don't want to create information in a vacuum.
Okay.
You want people to actually go out and have a way to apply it right away.
Oh, okay.
So sometimes you have to kind of fudge it a little. Like I said, when we were doing this training where we were teaching interview skills, obviously we couldn't have them do demo interviews in an online training.
Right.
But we had them go through and do, pick your answers. Like, what questions are you going to ask? How are you going to respond to this?
Okay.
Really kind of
fitting in activities and homework along the way.
Yes. And you want them to be situated in the real context they're being used. So if you're running an Instagram course and day one is about, setting up your profile to best maximize that, you're a business on Instagram, well, then what you might have people do is actually go set up their profile and post, I'm a big fan of social learning. Social learning has become a really prominent thing in the research. It's been shown to be an awesome, awesome tool for teaching.
Okay.
So have a Facebook group that goes with your course.
I was just going to say, I don't think you can be an online business without a Facebook group anyway. I think it's some sort of requirement out there. So go for it, right?
Facebook, Yammer, have some sort of social media tool. I mean, even if you want to set up LMS, learning management system, like Moodle, like, I'm trying to remember the other one. Penn State just switched over to it, but you want to set up an LMS.
Okay.
Use the message boards there. Have people talking and interacting.
Yeah.
Have their assignments be real things that they're going to do that are building towards that performance goal.
Because coming back, they could post their Instagram profile and everybody in the community can see it, and maybe some people follow them. They get some instant results.
They get feedback too, like, oh, hey, I really like this, but I'm still kind of confused about what you do. Or, hey, I'm actually in your target market and, I would tweak this because this is something that I'm looking for and that I know 10 other people who are also in your target market are looking for.
And I like that distinction too, because one of the things that drives me crazy about Facebook groups are people who pop in there and are like, do you like logo A or B? Well, I don't know. I don't even know who your customer is. So I think that's an important piece for us as instructional designers to always remind our students, like, yes, we want you to get feedback from this group, but is the group your customer, or how can you frame it to us so that we can give you useful feedback that's not through our lens, but through the lens of the person you're trying to reach?
And giving your learners their learning and their practice in context means that they're going to have an easier time transferring this knowledge they just have inert in their head into application and into practice, because they're going to actually be doing it, which is going to make retention better and doing it in a social setting. So I'm from a school of learning called constructivism. And one of the key points of constructivism is that knowledge does not sit inert in anyone's head. It is formed in conversation and in development and interaction, which is so true because we learned so much just from talking to other people and interacting with them. And it lets us filter the knowledge that we already have through these new lenses and really deepen it and really build our own understanding. And in doing so, increase group understanding. So Facebook groups or other social media groups are a fantastic way to do that. And they're also like super, super low maintenance as opposed to some of I see some platforms out there that are hellishly expensive. And I'm like, you don't need this.
Right.
You don't need this.
Well, and the other benefit is everybody's on Facebook. Let's face it. Right?
Everyone's on Facebook.
There is a huge leap to try to get people to go log into something else. And so again, in a world where we want people to get results and we want to show up where our people are, then, Facebook it is.
Yeah. And jumping back to the quizzes point for a second.
Yes, please.
Let's talk about the quizzes for a second. There is, unless you are specifically training people to take a test, quizzes are not the best way to see if they're actually understanding what you're teaching. Most people like, man, what is the best way to learn how to set up an Instagram profile? I know, I'll take a quiz on it. No, that's not rooted in what you're actually doing. It's like one of those common complaints about high school math where you go like, when am I ever going to use this? And
right, or when was the last time I took a multiple choice test?
Exactly.
I just ran into that, yeah.
It's not rooted in real practice.
Yep.
It's not rooted in people's day-to-day business lives or day-to-day personal lives. And they're just kind of there as busy work.
Yeah. Well, and I think they're there, and her point was she sees them there in the name of engagement, and I think almost gamification. And I think your point is, no, just go to Facebook. Just
better ways.
Social interaction. There's better ways, yeah.
Game-based learning, where you're using some of the principles of games like role-playing scenarios or like exploration and discovery, is really good. Research on gamification, where you assign an arbitrary point system and you build XP over time, less good. Because at the end of the day, we talk about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is from within, extrinsic motivation is something else is motivating you. At the end of the day, gamification is extrinsic learning, and extrinsic motivation does not have the same effect as intrinsic motivation. Whereas, if you have, say, 40 people in your course, whatever your course is on, and each person gets paired up with an accountability buddy, or you break them into, 10 groups of 4 and you go in and you check on how they're doing, well, suddenly the motivation is not only that they're there to learn because they want to learn, but they have people who are counting on them.
Yeah.
And that
will support them.
Exactly. That becomes a much more meaningful way. Whereas we've seen gamification in the research can actually turn some learners off from the content because they're like, I can't get ahead anyway. What's the point? And they just get discouraged.
Interesting. And I also like that take on engagement with accountability groups and with this social thing of practicing posting in a Facebook group, because a lot of what we're teaching online has to get translated online. And a lot of that starts getting into mindset stuff of people just being scared to take the actions. And I think if you're setting up within your course, them already having to take the action in a quote unquote like safe space within their accountability group or within your Facebook group, they are still having to go post something in a Facebook group. And if that has terrified them for a year or more, which I run into all the time, then just the act of doing it in that Facebook group talks it down to size so they can go do it in a public one, which is where they're actually going to have to put the skills to use, right?
Exactly. You give them, it's called a practice field. So basically they're able to go, and if you crash and burn in the practice field, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, you have people there who will help you figure out, okay, what happened, why did it happen, and how do you fix it so that it doesn't happen again? And it's a safe, like, failure in a safe place is not a bad thing. Failure is a good learning tool. So I think one of my course design tips is like, give your learners a safe place to fail. And by fail, I mean crash and burn and flame out. It's okay. They'll learn a lot.
Yeah, and we talk about that all the time too. I come from a tech startup background where we do this we follow this lean startup thing where the idea is fail as quickly as you can because you will learn as quickly as you can moving forward. And so that's something that I've had to learn working mostly with online people now, because there is this big fear of failure. And I'm like, I'm just throwing something against a wall and we'll see what happens because I know I'll move forward faster.
And you'll learn something from your failures.
Exactly.
You don't always learn from your successes. You can't always be like, oh yes, this was the one thing that made a difference. Whereas if you failed first, you probably have a better idea of what's going to make something successful.
Yeah. So I love that. And then bringing it back to the overall topic, as new course creators, we don't need to get super fancy and build in gamification and build in all this stuff. Like, let's stick to the basics, so we can be effective and because it works better for our students.
Like, I totally understand the appeal of bells and whistles. I really do. I mean, yes, if you're going to do an email sequence or a workbook or something, make it look good. There is a research proven correlation between how aesthetically pleasing your material is judged to be and how credible it's judged to be.
Yep.
And also how easy to use it's judged to be.
Absolutely.
So don't forego things being aesthetically pleasing. You don't need bells and whistles. Please, especially
They're very different things.
Especially as a new course creator, please avoid the bells and whistles. It's not, the more course quality does not correlate with bells and whistles. I've seen some courses that had tons and tons and tons of bells and whistles, and I was like, I wish you would put this kind of time into the content.
Right. And they probably just don't know how to put time into the content. So that, again, taking it back to what we need to include, I'm just going to assume most people are going to include video, whether we need to or not. Let's face it. It's
a fair assumption at this point.
And so that's going to be paired with the transcript and paired with some sort of engagement. Let's talk about the freaking workbooks. And as part of the homework idea, are those important? Do people learn really well with take-home workbooks? What's going on there?
So I can understand the workbooks if you're trying to teach, like, oh, this is how you conduct market research, because your learners might not have the right questions to ask.
Okay.
Or if you're trying to help them narrow down who their target market is.
Okay.
But again, like, if you're just creating a workbook to create a workbook, like, you have to keep asking yourself, is this something they're gonna do in the field?
Okay.
I know for me, when I do a learner analysis project, I sit down and I figure out, okay, what are going to be my baseline questions that I'm going to ask? And I always know that I'm going to take notes and I'm going to go back and review those notes. So for something like that, a workbook makes a little bit more sense. I built a training for military, reserve, and family members who were transitioning into a deployment period.
Okay.
It was about creating a family communication plan. And we had a workbook that went through that because, you know, people needed to write down their individual concerns. They needed to be able to have a space to talk about their family's concerns, and they needed to work with their family to draft that plan. And
makes sense.
And it's supposed to be written down. It made sense to just have it in a workbook where you could rip out the back, stick it on your fridge, and everybody agreed to use this plan and see how it was working and revise it as it went along. But I see some things where I'm like, why are you doing this? Like, I understand you're going for engagement and you want people to think about your content, and that's a great thing. That's so, so important. But again, if you're not using authentic practice, you're doing more work then that you...
So you're basically creating stuff so you can tell people that it exists so that the value of the course looks more valuable, right?
Yeah. Whereas, like, again, going back to, you know, this Instagram idea. I mean, I've taken a course where there was a workbook and it wasn't super helpful. Whereas I took another training where she was like, okay, get pencil and paper. You know, you've just seen me do this process. Pause the video. Do it yourself.
I love that.
And then come back and keep watching.
So, I mean, and that's what the question keeps coming back towards, is how can you design the real world activity, not how can you add engagement?
Yes.
Because when we ask, how can I add engagement? We think about, like, oh, I'll give them a workbook that they can fill out that has strategically placed blank spaces, or I'll give them the quiz, or the better question is, how can I assign the correct homework at the correct points?
Yeah. And figuring out the correct points kind of comes with when you go through and you've got, you know, your performance objectives and your enabling objectives, and you want to give people complete chunks of information. So, you know, you might give them, okay, this is how you set up a WordPress site. Your homework is to actually now set up, like, pause the video, go set up the WordPress site, refer back if you need help, and then come back and let's talk about picking a theme.
Okay.
Like, break it down, but don't break it down before you've given them a complete actionable chunk.
That makes sense. And that comes back to the first conversation we were having about transfer the knowledge. Again, I feel like you can take all these steps you're telling us and you can either apply them to different categories of people and different categories of expertise, or you can apply them to just how you're creating your course, right? Yeah. Where you're talking about performance or knowledge what were the steps? Knowledge.
You're going to have knowledge, application, and evaluation.
And evaluation. Yeah. So you can think about, I just now see myself chunking those down like into 5-minute modules, and each one. And then, okay, now that I have given you the knowledge, now we're going to apply it, right?
That's the other thing with video and courses, like 5 to 7 minutes per video is the ideal.
Yeah.
Like, give people a break. Do not have people watch a 20-minute video, because their attention, no matter how interested they are in your course, is going to drop off.
I do that all the time myself. I'm in a course that is completely changing my business. It is radically transforming everything, and the videos are like 25 minutes long and they kill me. And even though I know that it's amazing content and it's the best course I've taken ever online, hands down, and I just, the videos.
Yeah, the 25-minute videos are a killer, no matter how dedicated you are.
Yeah.
Because brains are just not. Julie Dirksen, who wrote a fantastic book called Design for How People Learn, which if you're going to DIY your course, please go buy Julie Dirksen's book. I'm not affiliated with her in any way, but please go buy her book because it will make your course so much better. She talks about, you have to entertain the elephant, because there's, you're the rider on the elephant. You know what you want to focus on, and the elephant is your attention. And the elephant is going to do what it wants.
For sure.
You have to find ways to entertain the elephant.
I love that. That's awesome.
And it's such a great metaphor, because you say that to people and they're like, oh yeah. Because an elephant is not going to sit and pay attention to a video for 20 minutes.
Right.
No matter how much you entice them, no matter how many peanuts you feed them, that elephant is not doing that. Because
it's a long time, and we live in a distracted society. It's just, you can think whatever you want to think about that, but it's factual. So yeah. Well, I want to make sure we cover all the questions for everyone, but before we do that, I would love an overview from you of how people can engage with an instructional designer for, let's say, different budget points, right? Because there's going to be high-end people who want to hand everything, and people who also just want, to stay true and have gut checks to make sure they're not missing something.
Yeah. So I think at one point, especially if it's your first time with a course, doing both your learner investigation and analysis and your content is something that you are going to want help for.
Yeah.
So you can go to an instructional designer. I know, at least for me, I offer a service where I help you come up with the questions to ask. You go ask them, and you make, your assessments, and you come back to me, and I take a look at what you've got and say, okay, I think you've got it, or you need to find out a little bit more.
And I just want to interrupt that really quickly, because I think that's really important. Budget or no budget, you want to be the one having those conversations, because you learn so much. I think we also live in a world where people are told to outsource everything, and there's stuff you shouldn't outsource. And
Exactly, because you're going to learn so much about your learner, and also from the marketing perspective, you're going to learn so much about who you're marketing to.
Exactly. I have people all the time asking me to do their market research, and I just won't do it because it makes no sense.
No, because you're the one who's going to have to engage with this section of people. So you can have various bits of help in terms of doing that.
Mm-hmm.
You can have someone who either, takes your content overview and does all the scaffolding. And you can hire that out, or you can say, okay, I took my content, I scaffolded it, and I'm looking for someone who's trained in this to give me feedback.
Okay. And by scaffolding, you basically mean an outline, right? This is where what's going on.
This is where, this is my content breakdown. This is where I think my activities are going to be. So basically having this sort of coaching relationship almost, if you will, where I'm not the person sitting here going, okay, this is how you should scaffold your activities. But I'm the person who says, okay, this is really good. This is really good. Let's rethink this. Tell me about your thought process.
Yep.
Because there's better fits.
Yeah.
Or there's another great book called E-Learning by Design, where Horton breaks down into think, connect, do activities. And you always want to structure it think. So think about what you've been giving, connect it to what you've just learned or other prior knowledge, do, actually implement it. Which is another great framework to think through when you're thinking about building activities. So you can have that kind of coaching relationship. You can say to an instructional designer, like I said, this is my content.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, this isn't what I do for a living. You do it. But again, an instructional designer is going to want to have a good working relationship with you.
Yeah.
And be able to go back and forth and get feedback, because ultimately you are the subject matter expert. We are the designers. We both have skill sets that we bring to the table, but we can't do our job as effectively without a positive working relationship. It goes back to courses are not built in a vacuum.
Yeah, it's not something that you 100% outsource.
No, you like, even when I worked building for the military, when we had completed assessment manuals, we had a team at the university who developed them, who we went back and forth with all the time. Yeah. And they became a resource and a sounding board. And yeah, we were doing the bulk of the instructional work. But if we had questions or we needed clarifications, or we could see as designers like, hey, there's not enough content here, we could go back to them and say, okay, we need, or we think this. There's also designers who, you can do all of that legwork yourself and then just go to an instructional designer and be like, hey, I want you to write the video script if you're doing videos. If you're doing interactive online modules, hey, I want you to build this, because if you're using a tool like Articulate Storyline 2 or Adobe Captivate, please don't try and learn those yourself at first.
And what tool? I've never even heard of those tools. What are they?
Okay, so I'm going to preface this with I have a bias here.
Okay.
Articulate Storyline 2 and Adobe Captivate are authoring tools for online interactive modules.
Oh, interesting. I didn't even know that existed. That's awesome.
Yeah. So if you've ever seen like little interactive courses that have those click-throughs and everything integrated into one window,
yep,
it's probably built in Storyline or Captivate. My advice to you as someone who's in the field, again, I'm not affiliated with either of these companies. Use Storyline. Just use Storyline. It's much easier. Captivate is buggy. Articulate's support is fabulous. They have an incredible online community where even if you're building in PowerPoint, there are instructional designers on the Articulate community who will help you and who will be
I love that.
Extremely knowledgeable. And they're all people working in the field.
I love that.
There's really not, the Articulate community is great. I've never really encountered any judgment, even when I've gone to them and been like, I'm trying to do this weird technical thing and it's not working. Please help me.
That's a great thing about a lot of online tech communities, that they are so supportive, and I had no idea these existed. So that's awesome.
So, I mean, if you are interested in instructional design, even the Articulate blog is great to read because you will read it. It's written in plain English. You will learn a lot.
Check it out.
It's also, Articulate can also be done to be mobile friendly, as can Captivate. Captivate, I just find to be a much more, having built in both. Captivate was the thing where when I was told to build in Captivate, I was like, did I displease you? Am I being...
I feel that way when people tell me that they use certain email programs, so I get it.
I'm like,
really? That's the one you chose? Really?
Am I being punished? Like, have I upset you? Because they advertise that there's integration to some extent with other Adobe products. It's buggy.
Got it. Okay.
The only flip side, the only upside to Captivate from my perspective is that it's cheaper.
Okay.
But like I said, we had all sorts of bizarre things go wrong with Captivate.
At which point the price doesn't matter.
Exactly. Whereas like I lost my serial number for Storyline and I emailed Articulate help. I got an answer promptly. And then I had a great conversation with the person who was actually helping me retrieve my serial number.
Funny how that works, isn't it?
So like, those are tools if you're looking to build online modules. If you're looking to do audio, good microphone, Audacity, those are going to be important. If you are really dead set on doing a workbook, I mean, I use InDesign if I'm doing those sorts of PDFs, and then there are ways to make them interactive. I know there are people who use Canva for it, because I know Photoshop and Illustrator. I don't use Canva a heck of a lot, but I know that it is an option.
Yeah, I'm the exact same way. I've always used the Creative Suite, so I've never looked at it, but I've seen beautiful things come out of Canva.
Yeah.
So
and
rock on if that's your jam.
If Canva is your thing, like, you are saving a lot of money over those of us who are on the Creative Suite.
Right, totally. And how about hosting courses? Have you gotten into that much? I mean, the whole, WordPress plugins or the now Teachable and Thinkific and new Kajabi world. Do you have opinions there?
I think, like, honestly, I've seen people do cool things with WordPress. Like,
Yeah.
I've seen really great things with WordPress. I think there can be some really solid integration. I think you can look at, a free LMS or CMS, whatever you want to call it, content management, learning management system, like Moodle.
Okay.
There are options out there that you don't have to pay for. You may have to be willing to get involved with the mess of the tech a little
That's
bit.
what I was just going to say. Yeah, that's always the trade-off.
But at the same time, like, I don't, like, yes, the bells and whistles are nice. They will not make or break your course.
That's what I was just going to say. Everything that we've just talked about in terms of the content and getting that set up, who cares where it's hosted?
Honestly,
as long as it's aesthetic, as you can find your way around and it works, right?
Honestly and truly, you can build a great course with PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Like, you can
I actually have a client who has built a wildly successful course with PowerPoint.
And you can still build in, like, if you want to build in interactive, like, scenario-based questions, like,
yeah.
for some reason you're doing like a safety training and you're like, oh, well, here's the scenario. How do you react? Here are 3 answers. You can still build with PowerPoint so that they're clicking and getting to see the result of just that answer.
Right.
There are ways to still make PowerPoint interesting. There are ways to still make PowerPoint stylish. That being said, please don't use the sound effects in PowerPoint.
Right. Or the flashing animations or anything. Yeah.
Like, there is a time and a place for animations and flashy visuals, but they have to kind of be demanded by your content. You can't just be like, yes.
Right.
And now I'm going to put the exploding smiley face on all of my pages.
Right. And I hope that we've moved past that. I haven't seen that in a while, so I'm sure it's still out there somewhere, though.
Still out there.
Oh, is it? Then I've just been lucky because I haven't seen it in a long time. But I think the message is get it out there, focus on the content and focus on the order and all the amazing things that you've shared, and then just put it into some sort of package that can be followed, right? There's no, you're just getting started. Don't kill yourself with that.
Tie it to a Facebook group, or if you like the chronological order, use Yammer, which is also free.
Okay.
Have that interaction, engage with your learners, talk to them, support them, give them a chance to talk with each other and support each other. Have strong content, have actionable steps. You don't need to teach all of your learners everything at once. It is okay to create 3 courses, that are mini courses, one that's for a beginner, one that's for someone who's an intermediate, one for someone who's advanced. Your beginners might not get to that advanced level. It's okay.
It's okay. And I think that was one of the questions that came up, do we always learn in a linear style, or is it sometimes in a different order? And maybe the answer is it's linear, but you might come in at different points, or you might jump to a more advanced linear segment and then go back to a more beginner one, but they're all contained within linear boxes. Does that make sense? Yeah.
There is a series of, towards being able to perform any skill, there's a series of knowledge points that you need to have. And people may come to them in different orders or in different ways, but fundamentally, if you need, to use a baking metaphor, if you need eggs and flour and sugar before you're going to get the cake, it doesn't.
The eggs and the flour and the sugar, that doesn't go away. Yeah.
It doesn't go away. And, so what if you add the eggs before the flour or the flour before the sugar?
Yeah.
They're still there. There's a lot of talk about learner-driven learning, which I think is really cool, which is, creating these modules and letting people pick where they start and letting them have control over the pace they go through and how they want to interact with it and how they want to learn with it. And, some people need to hear things and then live with them for a little bit to kind of digest and figure out.
That's me, for sure.
How does this fit into everything else I had? And then there are people who are like, go, 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 who just want to keep integrating all of this new knowledge and all of this new knowledge. And if you set them at a point where your learner stage is something where they're maybe coming in as an advanced beginner, but they still have to slog through all of this novice stuff. It's very frustrating, and they don't have any control over what they're doing. So also, in terms of the linear versus nonlinear question, if you don't have to do things in a specific set, to set up a blog, you have to do things in a certain order. Whereas, if you're learning Photoshop, there's some things that you need to do in a specific order, but otherwise, give people a series of modules on brushes, give them a series on
what are they trying to accomplish at that time?
Yes, let make to what they need quickly. Make them go through the steps that they really are going to need. And this is one of those things where if you really do like quizzes and tests, and you're building a course that may be multi-tiered in terms of who it's appealing to, use a pre-test. Yeah. Figure out where people are, what their deficits are, and start them there. Because you might have somebody going to this Photoshop example again, who's got all the basics of Photoshop, but wants to learn more about some of the more advanced things. Or,
point them into where they should start rather than them having to just figure it out.
This prescribed formula of you must start here.
Yeah.
But again, people are bad at self-reporting what their skill sets are. And so do poke them a little bit.
For sure. And I would hope, I know a lot of people we're talking to are developing courses for other entrepreneurs or other people who should be fairly self-motivated to want the information. A question that came up, which I think that we've answered, but I want to make sure we answer it explicitly, is how long the course should be. And I think the answer is from that original question that you asked in terms of what do you want people to learn at the end of it, and then just working backwards, right? There's no good answer.
Your course is as long as it needs to be.
Yeah.
You want to start from the bare bones essentials.
Yeah.
Your beginner does not need to know what you're teaching your expert. Give them the foundation. Give them the option to explore more in-depth strategies. Don't make it part of your core course. Do it as a bonus.
Yes,
do it
I love that.
Something else where if your learner gets to the end of this and is like, oh my God, I'm glad I did this because I need this to run my business, but I hate doing this.
Yep.
Don't just keep throwing things at them. Get them through a solid chunk of information. Give them, if you're convinced that there is this other thing that they could really benefit from, but they might not benefit from it till they've been doing it for 6 months, include it as a bonus. Or, include a tip sheet, include a desk reference, include something else where it's not part of your main core content, but it's something where if they're buying your course and part of buying that course is support, that, 6 months down the road when they can start implementing some of the stuff that you included in this bonus, they can still come talk to you.
For sure. And the other thing, I would even flip it. I think most of us have a tendency to include way too much, but I've also run into people who want to do quick videos. They have very specific information to share that's going to change a ton of stuff, but maybe it only lasts 20 minutes. And then it turns into this whole weird mindset thing of, oh my God, I have to produce an hour and a half worth of content when I really only need 20 minutes. No, let's frame the marketing message appropriately that this is a value, and it's going to be as long as it needs to be, both in terms of length or in terms of short and sweet. And this is exactly what you need to know. And it's not related to how much it costs.
Yeah. On one hand, please don't shortchange your learners with material. Make sure that we're giving them the opportunity to learn what they need to learn.
Right.
Oh, sweet Jesus, please don't pack your course with fluff.
Right.
Please do that. It's not
much
helpful.
more succinct way to say it. Yeah.
You don't
then move on.
You don't want to have gaps, and you don't want padding. You want to give them what they need. People have a better time with retention and transfer when they're getting information just as they need it. They have a better time with retention and transfer if they have to kind of think through things and you don't give them everything right away. If you say, okay, here's a puzzle. Go attempt a solution to this puzzle, put it out into the world, see how it performs, and then come back and we're going to dissect what the actual strategy is to solve this puzzle. because people are then going to be able to compare it with this experience that they've had. And they're going to tie this knowledge that you're correctly giving them in to the experience they had. And you're going to kind of leverage something called metacognition, which is thinking about your own thinking, which is an awesome tool, and you should use it wherever you can. And they're going to integrate this, and their learning is going to be so much deeper for it, because they're going to have a story and a whole retrieval queue around it instead of just this stuff that's kind of floating around.
I love it. I love it. God, you've given us so much good information today. I cannot thank you enough. Where can people go find you if they want to work with you?
So you can find me. My website is orangejuicediaries.com, and there's a contact.
Which I love, by the way, and I want to know the story about.
Okay, so we'll side note into this. In I almost said 10th grade, not 10th grade, sophomore year of college. Hello. I was taking summer courses online, and one of the things was like, oh yeah, come up with like a business name and a logo. And I was like, I don't do this. I'm not going to run a business. And I'm one of those people who can drink orange juice by the gallon. And so I was like, orange juice. And I was just playing word association. So for me, I was one of those kids who wrote all the time and always had a journal or a notebook or something like that. Okay. And I guess I was kind of playing off the cultural pastiche of stuff like the Nanny Diaries.
Gotcha.
And I was like, Orange Juice Diaries. Yes.
That's awesome.
I didn't realize at 19 that was going to go on to then become my business name.
I love it.
But I was attached to it.
Roll with it. It's memorable.
It's memorable and it's different. And like, I know right now there's a big thing online with the hyper femme and the very elegant and the floral. And I have so much respect for people rocking that, but it was just so not me.
Yeah, it's not me either. I get it.
Whereas I describe my branding as it's like Coney Island, Atlantic City, 1950s kitsch.
I love it.
And it felt so much more true to who I was. So that's, if you go on the website, you will definitely see that. There's a contact.
So orangejuicediaries.com.
You can also, the contact form is there. I'm on Twitter at OJ Diaries. If for some reason you like to Pinterest, I'm on Pinterest at the same handle. The only thing that probably won't work is smoke signals. I don't read those very well.
Fair enough. Plenty of ways for people to find you. And you work one-on-one in all the different ways that we talked, helping consult with people and get them, of course.
I do everything from like the person who kind of fairy godmothers and drops in when you need me, and a little bit more in-depth coaching, to working with you from the idea through the full development into implementation, and then going back and actually evaluating your course and saying, okay, what's working? What do we need to change?
I love it.
Maybe that you need to change nothing.
Right. Well, that's always good news, right? Well, I love it. And thank you so much for spending time with me today. I know that the whole community is going to be so psyched because everybody's thinking about their courses. So I really appreciate it. And I'm glad that you exist because we need more of you in the online world.
Thank you so much for the time to come and talk, and the community for their questions, just everybody. It was so nice to kind of sit and get some of these out there and try, and I'm hoping clear up some misconceptions about how does this mysterious black box of building a course work. Yeah,
for sure. And I know if people have follow-up questions, I'm sure you'll be around after this and willing to answer questions. Well, cool. Well, with that, I will let you go. Have a fantastic weekend, and thank you so much.
You too.